Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I welcome all of you to the week 13 virtual session of IT-270. As all of you know that this is a shared session, and in this session we are going to cover the remaining half of the material that we have studied for IT-270. In last week we talked about the part after midterm. Today we are going to talk about the part before midterm, that is 6 chapters from chapter 1 to chapter 6. I will be going through each lecture slides and I will list the important questions. I'm not going to load those here because within 2 or 3 lectures the capacity of the system collapses and then we have to delete one by one, and that wastes a lot of time. So instead I will be opening each lecture and I will be going through the lecture slides and telling you the important questions from that chapter. You can note it down. Also, this lecture is recorded, so you can download the recording later on and listen to the questions that I have mentioned as important from each chapter. Remember about the exams, as I had already mentioned in the face-to-face class last week. Don't take any chapter lightly. We know that the weightage of the material before midterm is 30 to 40% and the weightage of material after midterm is 60 to 70%. That's true. But by 30 to 40%, we don't mean that any chapter would be excluded. There will be MCQs, there will be true false, and there will be at least one short question that will be before the material of midterm, and those MCQs and short questions and true false would definitely be coming from each chapter. So no chapter is less important. Second thing to remember is that most heavily applied questions are before midterm. So remember that the biggest probability of an applied question coming is from material which was before midterm. Keep that thing in mind and prepare as well accordingly. So the material that we are talking today comprises of 30 to 40% of your final exam. It will have MCQs part from it, it will have true false part from it, and it will have at least one short question from this material that we are going to see today. Is it clear to everyone? Can you listen to me? Does anyone have any problem? If anyone has any problem, they should talk about the problem right now. Otherwise, chapter 6 is part of material before midterm. Yes, chapter 6 is part of material before midterm. Yes, that is going to be in this section. Okay, so now I am opening chapter 1 and let's look at the important questions from chapter 1. I'm going to only list the important questions, name the important questions. If you have any queries, any questions that you want to be further explained, we can explain it then. So the first important question from chapter 1, is what is project management and what are the advantages of using formal project management? Slide number 6 and slide number 7 of chapter 1 comprise the answer of this question. Project management is a knowledge comprising of tools and techniques which teach us how to manage a project activity properly. As we all know, a project is an endeavor which is a temporary organization which allows us to undertake a task on urgent basis, deliver the output and get out of the work after earning your money. Now there are many advantages. This is a structure which is a prevalent working model in all over the world for centuries. Project management allows us to do this efficiently and has a lot of advantages, as we can see in slide number 7. Yeah, it is recording. so you can download the recording later on as well. This is the first question. Second question from chapter 1. Chapter 1 has a lot of questions, by the way. Chapter 1 is a very important chapter. What is a project? This question already came in the midterm, so there is low probability of this question coming up again. But a project is a temporary organizational structure, a temporary activity undertaken to deliver some specific product or some specific service within defined scope, time and budget. All the activities that are carried out in a project have a starting time, have a finishing time. Resources are allocated. After the project is complete, the resources are released. Projects can be of different sizes. Projects get completed when their objectives are met. Second important question from chapter 1. Triple constraint of project management. This thing I think also was discussed in midterm exam, but still an important question. Triple constraint, slide number 14. As we can see, the triple constraint talk about cost, time and scope. These are the three things that a project has to meet. Very important question from chapter 1, the 9 knowledge areas. The 9 knowledge areas that we have studied then throughout the project. These knowledge areas include all activities like communication management, scope management, time management, cost management, quality management, human resource management, communication management, risk management, procurement management, integration management. Out of these, 4 are core knowledge areas, while the 4 are facilitating knowledge areas, and 1 is coordinating or integrating knowledge area. This is an important question. Knowledge areas. Next important question, what are the factors that are required for a project to be successful? On slide number 24, there are 10 factors which are listed here to be considered in order to make a project or consider a project successful. When a question like this came in the exam, if it came, number 1, it will not ask you to list all the 10 factors. Number 2, it will not ask you to list, or for example, whenever a question comes to list something, if the list comprises of more than 5 elements, it will not ask you to name every one of those. This is a fact. This is how it will happen. Secondly, you will not be required to remember the exact words. You will be asked to list 3 items, 4 items, or maximum 5 items, and you will be asked to name them in your own words. And if there is some explanation needed from them, make sure that you only give as much explanation as covers the space that is given to you. So 10 factors which help the project become successful. Slide number 24, important question from chapter 1. What is a program and project portfolio management? What's a program and what do we mean by project portfolio management? Program is a set of projects that are carried together under one division, under one supervision. Usually a senior project manager is responsible for ensuring that all the projects that are being carried out under his supervision share resources. The activity of sharing these resources, of sharing these responsibilities, the facilities, is known as project portfolio management. Who is a project manager and what are the skills for a project manager beyond technical skills is the next important question, available on slide number 32. A project manager should be one who should be comfortable with change, who should understand the organization for which they work, who should be able to lead teams to accomplish project goals. A project manager is a person responsible for leading the project successfully throughout. The other skills that need from him: environment knowledge, general management skills, soft skills, etc. There is a list of 10 most important skills of project manager on slide number 35. This is also an important question from chapter 1. Chapter 1 has a lot of important questions, as I had mentioned you earlier. So slide number 35, yes, slide number 35 carries the list of important skills from the project manager. Any other important questions from chapter 1? No. So this is the set of 6 important questions from chapter 1. Does anyone have any questions that they need to ask? You can ask them and I will answer those. Does anyone have any questions, or we should move to chapter 2? Okay, so moving on to chapter 2. Chapter 2 talks about the context of information technology in project management, which means that project management is something that is not necessarily part of IT, because the projects can be IT based and projects cannot be IT based as well. For example, building a bridge is not an IT project. For example, laying down a road is not an IT project. For example, constructing a school is not an IT project, but project management is needed for all different kind of projects. Now, the important thing that has been mentioned here is whether you are doing project management for an IT project or you are doing project management for a non-IT project, the IT itself gets involved in any sort of project, because you are using software, because you are using reminders, because you are using software to plan, because you are using software to communicate, because you are using software to administer, because you are using software to estimate. So many things that you are doing with the help of software. This is why the scope of project managers keeps on increasing, especially the project managers who have studied software project management, because they have both of the skills of project management and the skills of using information technology. So this chapter 2 talks about how information technology plays a role in software project management, traditional project management in a successful manner. So the first important question from chapter 2, as we were talking of in the midterm exam as well, probably this question did not come, so now this question is an important question. There are 3 sphere model for system management. The 3 spheres are business, organization, and technology. For each of these spheres, there are some concerns. For example, about the business, the concern is what will be the project cost? What will be the project cost for the end user? What will be the support cost? What will be the impact on the environment, etc. All of these relate to the business. Now, when we talk of technology, questions can be, should the project use a particular kind of software or a different kind of software? Should it use a particular kind of hardware or a different kind of hardware? So there are many questions which determine how our project works. Now, out of all of these 3 spheres, the most important sphere that can come in the exam is the organizational sphere. And what are the 4 frames of understanding an organization? Slide number 7, as you can see, to understand the organization, we have 4 frames. Structural frame, which tells us what is the hierarchy of organization, human resource frame, which tells us what kind of people are employed by the organization, political frame, which tells us what kind of rules and regulations that organization has to follow, symbolic frame tells us what are the traditions, ethos, ethics, habits of that organization and the people working for that organization. The understanding of the organization is very important, because unless you understand the organization and its people, you cannot successfully execute project in it for all of these four aspects. Understanding who holds the power, understanding where the useful people are, understanding what laws would be coming in your way and what laws would be supporting you, understanding what are the things which are important to the organization. For a project manager, these are very vital pieces of information. So this is the first important question from chapter 2. Second very important question from chapter 2, although I think we had some sort of question related to it in midterm exams, so probably the probability of coming up this question would be less, but still, organizational structures. There are three kind of organizations: functional, project, and matrix. When we talk of functional is an organization in which there is no concept of project. Everything is carried out in a routine, procedural way. Project, in which most of the activities that are being carried out are based on project. Matrix, where some of the activities are based on project and some of the activities are based on functions. We have further three sub-categorizations of weak matrix, balanced matrix, and strong matrix. Slide number 11 contains characteristics of all the three different kind of organizations. This is an important question from chapter 2 that you should be very well prepared of. Next, relatively important question, top 10 characteristics of organizational culture. Slide number 13. You will again be asked, can be asked to list some of them or explain in your own words some of them. Remember which these are. Remember at least 4 or 5 important of any list that are given here, so that you can write an answer. You will not be asked to write explanations or names of more than 5 elements from any list that you have studied if a question came like that. Next important question, slide number 21. Project phases and project life cycle. If you remember, project life cycle means, if you remember from the course of system analysis or from the course of IT-101, a life cycle activity, system development life cycle means from the day the project is conceived to the day the project is finished, all of the phases are known as project system development life cycle or project life cycle in our case. This relates with every activity that we carry out to make sure that the project and the end product that we are supposed to make are completed. The project is divided into phases. Each phase is linked with the previous phase and the next phase. The output of each phase becomes the input of next phase. Usually the output of each phase is a deliverable. We maintain it, we record it, and we use it for our project as well as for the projects to come. Project life cycle comprises of how many phases? You can see here how many phases we have. We have project concept, project development, project implementation, and project phase out, close out, as we can call them. So 2 of these are related to feasibility and 2 of these are related to acquisition. From the system development life cycle conversion to project life cycle, very important question coming on slide 24. System development life cycles for the projects can be divided into 2 categories: predictive life cycles and adaptive life cycle. If we are working with traditional life cycle models where we focus a lot on requirements, planning, design, etc., these are known as predictive. We usually use these models like waterfall model, prototyping model, RAD model, spiral model, all of these models. We use these models where we do a lot of planning and design and analysis, etc., because we want to be sure about the requirements that a client has to pose on us. That is why we call it predictive, because we can predict, we can safely predict what would be the outcome of this project. But with the recent development models and system development life cycle models which are being proposed, like Agile, Scrum, Sprint, etc., that we are seeing now, the main focus is not on design or very long requirement analysis, etc. The focus is gather as many requirements as possible and go into development. Whatever the end product will be, we will see what are the problems in it and we will adapt. We will improve. So these new models which are coming, which are quick, which are more focused on day-to-day communication, fast-paced communication, very active involvement with each other, these are known as adaptive software development lifecycle models. So two different models, predictive and adaptive. This is an important question from chapter 2. Recent trends in project management, outsourcing, offshoring, and virtual teams. Slide number 30. After this, there are explanations of these important small questions which can come in the examination. Outsourcing means the activity where we give a part of our project that we are working on to a third party, maybe in our own country, maybe in some other country, and they develop that for us. This is like a project within the project. We are responsible for making sure that we have complete component that we have outsourced. Our customer is not concerned with it. We are responsible to deliver the complete product to the customer. If we think that some part of our product can be developed more efficiently by someone outside our team, we give it to them and we call it outsourcing. Offshoring, when we assign some of the non-critical IT activities of our organization to some other organization to manage it, because they have better human resource, because they have cost-effective mechanisms, because they have more hardware resources to dedicate to it and more experience. This is known as offshoring. A virtual team is when we convert our project team in such a way that we don't need a dedicated office space or dedicated office hours for our project team. Our project teams can work from any place, from their home, from their entertainment, from their driving, etc. But they need to be on the project and connected all of the time, so the productivity increases and the costs of maintaining an office, etc., reduce significantly. This is the last important question from chapter 2. Anything that you want to ask about chapter 2? Anything that you want to ask? No questions, so we move to chapter 3. Let's see what chapter 3 has for us. From chapter 3, we start on specific, from chapter 4 that will happen, by the way. So we look at what are the important questions from chapter 3? So the first important thing to understand from chapter 3 is, let's see if we have any important question. Yeah, the first important question from chapter 3, project management process groups and knowledge area mapping. What do we mean and what is the importance of it? Slide number 9. If you look at slide number 9, mapping process groups to knowledge areas. By now we all know what do this mapping means. The project management comprises of many processes. I think the total number of processes given by PM body of knowledge is 49, the total number of processes. These processes are scattered over the 9 knowledge areas, and these 9 knowledge areas work throughout the 5 process groups. 5 process groups of the project management. What are those 5 process groups? Initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and closing. These are the 5 project management process groups, and 9 knowledge areas. We have just talked 4 core knowledge areas, 4 facilitating knowledge areas, and 1 integration knowledge area. Each of these knowledge area has its own processes, but all of the processes are not necessary to be for all of the process groups. Some of the processes are for the initiating, some of the processes are for executing, some of the processes are for closing, some of the processes are for planning, etc. So we map each process between its knowledge area and the process group in which that should be executed. This is known as mapping. Throughout the remaining chapters of this course, we have studied this mapping, right? So this is very important. You may be asked to explain what this mapping means, and you may be asked to give some example, any example that you can create. So keep in mind any one knowledge area and process linked with a particular process group, just to give an example if there is required an example, but other than that you don't need to remember exactly which process belongs to which process area and which knowledge area, etc. You don't need to remember that. That kind of question will not come. Second important question from chapter 3, project charter and kickoff meeting, slide number 19. What is a project charter and what do we mean by kickoff meetings? A project charter is the first formal contract which outlines our commitment on the both sides, on the side of client and on the side of development team, to conclude the project within defined time, within defined budget, and meeting the specific objectives. In order to agree on the project charter, we hold some kickoff meetings. In these kickoff meetings, we discuss and brainstorm what are the major elements of a project that is going to be agreed upon. Next important question. No, there is no other important question. Chapter 3 doesn't have that many important questions, but it has surely some MCQs and some true false that you need to work on. So chapter 3 has only these 2 important questions. Anyone has any idea of any question from here? Okay, coming to chapter 4. Chapter 4, 5, and 6 are the most important questions from the material before midterm. Chapter 4, Chapter 5 and Chapter 6, as far as short questions are concerned, these are the most important chapters that you need to focus on before midterm, because these also have applied questions inside them, which you should be taking care of. The first important question, and from Chapter 4 till Chapter 11, this is an important question from each chapter. I have been focusing on this throughout the course every week, and I am still emphasizing on it. The description of processes inside each knowledge area that we have studied. As you see on slide number 6 of Chapter 4, the processes of project integration management are listed. As you can see, a total of 6 processes belong to project integration management on slide number 6 and slide number 7. This is an important question from each chapter. The probability of any one of these coming in your exam is very real. So from Chapter 4 till Chapter 11, every chapter lecture slides have an element, a question in the beginning asking you what are the processes of any knowledge area and what are their responsibilities, are their tasks. For every of these, there is going to be a diagram, a figure like the one you will see on slide number 8. This figure contains 3 important things: the name of the process, the output of the process, and the particular phase to which that output belongs. If you want just to give a small answer, this figure is sufficient. So this tells 3 important things: what is the process, what is the process group to which it belongs, and what is going to be its outcome. You will not be asked, as I have already mentioned, if there are more than 5 elements in the list, and even if there are 5, you will not be most probably asked to list each of them. You will be asked to list some of them in your own words and explain in your own words as well. So this is a very important question: processes belonging to a knowledge area and their output. So for each chapter, prepare this question very well. This is for Chapter 4, and this question's answer is on slide number 8. This is a question that you should be preparing very well. Strategic planning and project selection. SWOT analysis. What is SWOT analysis and why is it carried out? SWOT analysis, as you can see on slide number 10, SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. When we are selecting, when we are deciding whether we should undertake a project or we should not undertake a project, the first thing that we do, we carry out a SWOT analysis. This SWOT analysis is an activity in which we quickly look at all of the possible alternatives, look at their strengths, look at their weaknesses, look at the opportunities that they may have for us in future, look at the threats that we may face with those in the future. The projects which have the most strengths and opportunities and least threats and weaknesses are the most appropriate candidates for our future project. Second thing, this was on slide number 8, I think. Yeah, let me see again. No, it was on slide number 10. SWOT analysis, important question. Next important question: net present value. Net present value, I think there was some kind of question from net present value in the midterm, so there is very low probability that this question will be coming as an applied question in the final exam, but you should be very clear in knowing how we calculate net present value. Remember the formula that we talked about, how we subtract the returns of each year from the earnings. from the spendings of each year, how we include the coefficient of inflation or discount rate, and how we come up with the total net present value of each project. You should remember the process, although there is very little likelihood that this question would be coming, how to calculate net present value. Return on investment, again, this is important question from chapter 4, the fourth important question from chapter 4. What do we mean by return on investment? What is its utility, and how it is calculated with internal rate of return. Weighted scoring model, the other important applied question. Again, probability of this question coming as practical question is very little, but you can have a question asking you to explain its importance and its method of working. So we know that we look at all of the factors, then we look at their percentage contribution to the project selection. Then for each of the factor we assign it a score from 0 to 100. We balance it according to the percentage of importance that we have given, and in the end for each project we add all of the factors and their values. This becomes the overall value of that particular project. The project which has the highest value in the weighted scoring model becomes our selected project. So this is an important question from chapter 4. Next important question. Yes, this question is very important. What is project charter? What are the important elements of a project charter? So project charter template is given on slide number 30 and slide number 31. A project charter is the first contract after SWOT analysis, and after, if you remember, we were talking of charter and kickoff meetings in chapter 3 as well. This is the first contract that is carried out. This contract gives an outline of what will be going to be the scope of the project, what are the objectives of the project, how the project will be considered successful, when the project will be considered complete, who is going to supervise it, who is going to manage it, who are the contract people, etc. The first binding document between both of the parties is the project charter. Its template is given on slide number 30 and slide number 31. This is sixth important question from chapter 4 and very important from the examination point of view. Next important question, slide number 44. Change control, integrated change control, configuration management, whatever we call it. What do we mean by change control? Why is it important? What do we mean by change control system? What do we mean by change control board? Any of these questions is a very important question from chapter 4, starting from slide number 43 up till slide number 48. This all relates to configuration management and change management. This is one question. What is change? Why do we need to manage change? What kind of activities we do? For example, what is a change control system? For example, what is change control board? Why it needs to be integrated? What do we mean by configuration management? This is an important technical question. So make this question very well prepared from slide number 43 till slide number 48. This is a very important part from chapter 4. That's all from chapter 4. These are the important questions from chapter 4 that you should be preparing. No, the applied questions in this chapter are not likely to come because we already had an applied question from this chapter in midterm exam. There is the probability of practical questions from this chapter almost 0. However, the conceptual questions to explain how a particular technique works, to explain the change management, to explain the components of a project charter, etc. These kind of questions can come from chapter 4. Is it clear, Bakas? Okay, chapter 5. Project scope management. Quickly going through chapter 5 and looking at its important questions. The first important question, as we all know, slide number 5 and slide number 6, the major processes of scope management, their outputs, their major tasks, etc. Like every chapter about knowledge areas, this is going to be an important question from each chapter and for this chapter as well. Second important question, what are major methods of collecting requirements? Slide number 9. What are methods of collecting requirements? Slide number 9. Questionnaires, interviews, prototypes, software tools, etc. This is second important question. Third important question, what is scope and what are its purposes? Slide number 13. Scope is the boundary of the project. All the activities which are inside the scope are part of the project. Any activity which is not inside the scope is not going to be our part of project. Even our project cannot change if it is outside the scope of our project. WBS, creating WBS, major types of WBS, activity-based WBS, project-based WBS, how many layers, what do we mean by layers of WBS, starting from slide number 18 with examples, as you can see. Then major approaches to developing WBS, although this conceptual question had appeared in the midterm exam, so the probability of coming of this question is quite limited, approaches of developing WBS, but there is a very high probability that we may have some short question from WBS, WBS dictionary, major guidelines which are required to create a proper WBS, available on slide number 26 and slide number 27. WBS is an important conceptual question. Again, very little probability that it will come as an applied question, because this particular question has been already solved in the assignment as well. But an applied question out of the conceptual question, very high likelihood that you may have some part of WBS related part in your final exam. Conceptual. Slide number 31, best practices for avoiding scope problems, and slide number 32, suggestions for improving user input, and slide number 33, suggestions for reducing incomplete requirements. This is the last question from this chapter. Suggestions, how we can make sure that whatever charter and scope we have identified in the beginning, our project sticks with it. These 3 slides give important suggestions about it. You don't need to list, as I have been saying again and again, you don't need to list all the practices, all the suggestions. You just need to give a sample, or according to the number of elements that have been provided to you, you need to give just that much of explanation. These are important questions from chapter 5. Can we go to last chapter before midterm? Okay, the last chapter is about time management, and this is an important chapter because actually it was not properly covered in the midterm exam as well and had very important questions. My advice to you for the applied question, put very strong attention on chapter 6, chapter 7 and chapter 8. 6, 7 and 8, these three are very important chapters for applied question. There is going to be an applied question, and my suggestion for applied question would be chapter 6, chapter 7 and chapter 8. Put very good attention to these for applied questions coming through. Chapter 6, the first important question from chapter 6, the conceptual questions on slide number 7, the major processes of time management, their names, their outputs, their descriptions. This is the first important question from chapter 6. Second important question, activities and milestones. What do we mean by activity? Slide number 9, activity list. Activity is one independent task that we carry out in the project. Milestone is something which we consider as a stopping point after a certain number of activities have been carried out. Each activity needs some resources, some defined output, some input, some people to work on it. When we start with the project, we need to list all of the activities first. So we make a complete list activity. We make a complete activity list. After that, we need to give dependencies between the activities. The dependencies, as we have discussed in the class, the dependencies can be finish to finish, finish to start, start to finish, finish to start, etc. But if there is an applied question, all the dependencies would be finished to start, means the previous activity finishes and the next activity starts. So remember how that works. Some of the dependencies are mandatory. Mandatory means you have to follow them. Some are discretionary, means project manager can include them or not include them. And some of the dependencies are external, which are enforced upon us. Once we have made all the list of activities and we have identified dependencies between them, the next thing that comes before us is to create a network diagram. Now, as you remember, we have made two kind of diagrams, activity on arrow, AOA, network diagram, where the activities are on arrows and the circles between these activities only show the starting point and ending point of each activity. One activity can be dependent on only one activity. One activity can be dependent on more than one activities. Any of these is possible. So to understand how to create these diagrams and how to read these diagrams is very important. The major things that you need to work on: creating this diagram, creating forward pass, creating backward pass, calculating the total duration of the project, calculating the duration of each activity, calculating the slack or the difference between forward pass and backward pass, and finally finding the critical path, the path on which all of the activities have zero lag, the path which cannot be delayed any further, calculating the duration of each path from start to end of the project. As we know, we have practiced all of this. You are very good at it. So make sure that you know how to draw and you know how to read AOA diagrams and PDM diagrams, both precedence diagram method, to learn to. But if you are not asked to choose any particular diagram, you can use you can always stick with one that you like. If you are asked to draw, You can draw AOA or you can draw PDM, whichever you are more comfortable with. You will not be forced to draw any one of these diagrams, but you should be able to understand both. You should be able to calculate both. You should be able to calculate critical path. You should be able to do forward passing. You should be able to do backward passing. All of this is very important. Next important question, 3-point estimate or PERT estimate, which will be coming later on as well. PERT chart, as we know. Let's see where the PERT chart is from chapter 6. PERT chart. Yeah, on slide number 46, PERT evaluation, 3-point estimation. We use PERT estimation to estimate the schedule and cost of each project plan that we have created, or each project schedule. Now there are some conceptual questions, important questions from this chapter. Gantt chart. What is Gantt chart? Slide number 26. This is an important conceptual question from chapter 6. Next important question from chapter 6, critical path method. Slide number 33. How critical path is calculated? What is the purpose of critical path? What do we mean by slack or floor? How to calculate it? This is an important question. Next important question. Murphy law and Parkinson law. Murphy law and Parkinson law, slide number 44. This is an important question, but we have already talked about. And these are all important questions from chapter 6. So this was the material before midterm. These were like 30 or so important questions before midterm that you need to prepare for short questions. So any questions that you have to ask, otherwise we can close this session, and then in next section we would dedicate to question and answer. This session is, by the way, recorded, so you can download it anytime and you can look at the questions that we have talked about. Anyone has any questions, please go ahead and ask those. For chapter 6, you mean for chapter 6? Or all of the slides? No, it will not be possible for going on all of the slides, though I have given the numbers of all of the slides. Okay, for chapter 6. Let me go again quickly. Well, the slides are important for conceptual questions. So the first important slides are slide number 7 and 8. Where we talk about processes of time management. Slide number 9, where we talk of activities and activity lists. Slide number 9 and 10, second important conceptual question. Slide number 14, major types of dependencies: mandatory dependencies, discretionary dependencies, external dependencies. For a flight question, how to create AOA diagram or how to create PDM diagram, how to read them, how to calculate the critical path, how to calculate the forward path, the backward path, etc. This is a flight question that you have to practice and do on your own. Next important conceptual question is on slide number 26, Gantt chart. Slide number 33 and 34, critical path and how to calculate the critical path. Slide number 44, Murphy law, Parkinson law, and buffers. Slide number 46, PERT evaluation technique and its formula on slide number 47, how to work with it. These are the important slides from chapter 6. Okay? Thank you so much, all of you. I will see you in inshallah next session, which would be question and answer. If you have any, you can join there. Have a wonderful week ahead. Take care and Allah Hafiz.